everyone. I'm Maureen Droney, and I am here to welcome you to our second episode of The Forum, presented by the Recording Academy Producers and Engineers Wing. Now, The Forum is meant to be an ongoing series, and its content will be determined by what our P&E Wing members, including you, tell us you want to hear and learn more about. So today's topic is a conversation about the artist-friendly and high-quality streaming and download service, Qobuz. The idea for today's episode came about because of a quite fascinating and educational presentation about Qobuz at the 2023 Indie Week conference in New York City. And it seemed like something that our producer and engineer members would want to know more about. So here we are. There will be time for some Q&A after the on-screen conversation, so please put your questions in the Zoom Q&A function at the bottom of your screen. For other communications, just use the chat function. Now, I want to introduce you to the hosts of the forum. They are Jordan Brooke Hamlin, is a Nashville-based composer, engineer, producer, and multi-instrumentalist. She's the owner of Moxie, which is a 20-acre recording studio, production house, and retreat space in Nashville. Jordan has produced and/or engineered for the Grammy-winning duo Indigo Girls, for KT Tunstall, Tenille Townes, Rufus Wainwright, and many other amazing talents. And as a touring and session musician, Jordan's contributions include collaborations with Brandi Carlile, Missy Higgins, Loudon Wainwright III, the Secret Sisters, and the Nashville Ballet, just to name a few. Seattle-based producer engineer Glenn Lorbecki established his career with such diverse artists as the Violent Femmes, Dizzy Gillespie, and Alicia Keys. His collaborations with a bunch of acronyms, including MTV, CBS, PBS, and ABC, along with Sony and Microsoft, include numerous recordings, broadcast productions, and TV and film and game soundtracks. Glenn is also a member of the award-winning Grammy Awards Music Broadcast Mix Team. And you can hear some of his work in immersive audio in a permanent exhibit at the Los Angeles Grammy Museum. Glenn's latest project has been mixing the soundtrack for Destiny 2, which is the hit video game from Bungie. So take it away, Jordan and Glenn.
Thank you, Maureen. I'm so excited to be here. Good to see you, Glenn. We're back. Episode 2. We had such an awesome conversation about immersive, and I'm looking forward to having this conversation. I want to bring on some special guests today, including Qobuz Managing Director Dan Makta. Dan Makta served as senior executive at record labels including RCA, Jive, and Razor and Tie, before in 2018 joining the high-quality France-based music platform Qobuz. Qobuz launched in the United States in early 2019, and since then, Dan and his team have also had responsibility for Qobuz in the UK, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, and the Nordics. And Dan, can you bring in our other guest?
Absolutely. Our other guest is Jessica Thompson, who is a Grammy-nominated mastering and restoration engineer located in the San Francisco Bay Area. She's worked on recordings across formats, eras, and genres, including archival recordings from early tape-based composers Louis and Bibi Baron and jazz pianist Errol Garner, along with new records from indie guitarist Kurt Weill and reggae multi-instrumentalist Packy Man. Welcome. Jessica, turn on your camera. Nice to see you.
Hello, hello.
Thank you guys for being with us today. Excited to hear a little bit more about this platform, which I feel like deserves more airtime. I love it for our producer and engineers, particularly as someone who offers high res and as someone who seems to like care about the music on your platform.
Thank you. Thank you for the introduction. I also, want to preemptively thank Jessica for taking part in the discussion today. She is a engineer whose work is, impeccable. And when we found out that she liked using Qobuz and was a fan, said yes, we have to collaborate. And that's really just indicative of how we work, which is really on a one-to-one, very personable level. It's a very small company. Qobuz is based in France, and it started 15 years ago. Actually, we were the first to offer any lossless or high resolution streaming. But as you mentioned in the intro, we only opened up in the US 5 years ago. So kind of late to the market in the US, but absolutely focused from the get-go on sound quality. Like that was just it was a huge differentiator at the time of the company's entrance into the market. And people did say, as you can imagine, nobody wants that, lossless file. MP3s are good enough. And we persisted in our delusion that there was a reason and an audience for it, and other giant companies and big players ended up adding lossless or high resolution to their platforms, indicating that there is an audience for it and there are people who care about sound quality. So that's a big difference. And like you said, it's music focused. We're just music. We're really buying for music lovers and vinyl collectors and people who are into music a little bit more than the average Joe or Jane. That's
Well,
our
I want
audience.
to I
Oh
want
yeah,
to thank
go
you
ahead.
for persisting with that delusion, because those of us who care about sound quality are flocking to Qobuz. I have to shout out Leslie Ann Jones. She is the person who turned me on to Qobuz when we were talking about high-res audio, which is, of course, a frequent topic among SF chapter board members. I was looking for a place where I could download, because I like to download stuff to listen to for reference tracks in my work. And I knew about HD tracks and I knew Bandcamp, but I didn't know there was a streaming service that also offered a download store. And Leslie turned me on to that, and no looking back. So thank you for that.
Yeah. So that's part of what makes us different, is this idea that sound quality matters above all else. That's a given. The context and all the information around the music is also really important. The download experience is something we actually, before we were streaming service, we had this download store. So that's been since day one. And the download a la carte sales, while kind of as a mass market thing, in terms of lossy download sales, streaming has kind of replaced that. But for certain niche audiences, including mastering engineers and DJs and people that prefer to have music stored locally on a server versus streaming by files, and that's part of our proposition too. So I was going to do like a very quick screen share and just show the app so that the people who have no idea what Qobuz is could see this. So like I said, we're a music only company. We only do one thing, which is, well, two things: music streaming and music downloads. And we have like other streaming services that people I'm sure are familiar with, apps and integrations into hardware and a website and all that good stuff. The one thing that's really different, which I often feel is worth pointing out, is Qobuz is the only company that does what we do that is not, either a publicly traded financial behemoth or part of a giant tech company, all of which do tons of great things, but we feel like it's nice to be an alternative. It's a small boutique, mom and pop record store version of streaming, and that's, kind of how you can think of us. Let me just get this screen share going. Let's see. Oh, this was working nicely before the party started. Let me see if I can get this to share properly. Can you see this?
Looking good.
All right, great. So this is the desktop app. The mobile apps are similar. And when I say the mom and pop record store, it really, the metaphor holds in more ways than one. I mean, quite literally, when you open up the app, the first thing you see is new albums in a variety of genres. This is like the rack in the front of the record store, and they're picked by our human music team, which is music fanatics in a variety of genres. And it is album focused, and it's includes great reissues, and people who are really into music appreciate these kind of choices. So here's the brand new album from Pearl Jam, and of course Taylor Swift. But we've also got the first ever digital reissue of Luther Vandross's pre-fame band album Luther, that's never been available digitally, or this great Steve Cropper reissue. And the other thing that you guys will really appreciate, I think, is that Qobuz displays all of the credits that we get from, taking a guess, a gamble. Yes, these guys did send good credits. The metadata that we get from the record companies is not always great, but when it is and complete, I mean, a lot of people on this record, but we do display all of the credits. The other thing that's pretty cool and unique to us 100% is when we can get them from the record companies, a digital booklet that's right in the app. So if you like to dig deep while you're listening, we can supply the content. The other thing about Qobuz, of course, is album reviews you see here, and the magazine section, which is more long form written content, stuff to read while you're listening. These long form articles, everything is clickable. You can get the tracks going, get a playlist going while you're listening. And this is stuff that our team puts together on a weekly basis. And, I think that that's really a big differentiator. This is music. Someone said it's a streaming service for the real heads, old school heads, crate diggers. It depends on how you want to look at it. Maybe if you're a classical music fan, you don't consider yourself an old school head, but we really super serve all of these niches with the human curated playlists and editorial that is, kind of focused on the music that people who are, really into sound and really into listening, maybe more apt to want to dig deep on. And that's our niche, that's our audience. And we do know that people who make the music and are involved in the creative process do tend to care about this stuff a little bit more than the average Jane or Joe. So I'm really grateful to Maureen and you guys for the opportunity to, help spread it word of mouth. As our marketing budget is like zero. We're a really small company, like an independent, like I said, mom and pop, kind of like the indie record label version. We're trying to do a lot with a little and serve an audience that we know is there and try to grow it. But every day is, finding ways to speak to groups of people who will be interested. So again, thank you to Maureen and the P&E wing and the Grammys as a whole for the opportunity. It's not taken for granted at all.
Thank you. And thank you for showing credits and caring about credits. That's such a lifeblood for producers and engineers and people who make the record. And it's so not a priority for a lot of other people in the chain. So it also often feels like it can be such an opaque process whenever you turn in, you worked on the record. And so even being accessible in that way is really helpful and definitely serving the community. Appreciate that.
Yeah, and we're small and accessible, and we can easily update things, change things, add things to credits, and it's again we're a very approachable group of people, so it's not a giant tech company where you would have no idea how to find the person who can help you. We're here for you.
I'm speculating that a lot of P&E folks would agree with this, but if I could have a wish list of features for a hypothetical streaming service, it would be high-res audio, ability to download, displaying credits, fair compensation for creators, and that should be a given, right? We should start with that, and yet it's not always a given. So I really appreciate the focus on making sure the music sounds as it's intended to sound and serving an audience that cares about that quality.
Yeah. I mean, the popularity of streaming, as a mass market listening experience has been exponential, and now there's music everywhere all the time. But the nice thing, in 2024 is that you can actually have that convenience with audio quality. You don't have to sacrifice it. I mean, plenty of people really don't care, and God bless them if they can go through life listening to crappy sound. I mean, but once you've heard what music is supposed to sound like, it is hard to go back. So we're appreciating the fact that technology actually makes this accessible to really anybody. You don't need to spend $100,000 on a fancy hi-fi system to benefit from decent sounding music. I mean, you do have to have wired headphones, more or less. Bluetooth makes everything equal. Bluetooth has gotten better and better, but it's still not the same as listening to high resolution through wired headphones. But the portable DACs and dongle DACs and ways that people can listen to real 24 192 high res on the go at the beach is new territory. And the nice thing about Qobuz is we focus on that group. We don't need to get every kid and 51% of the market. We're trying to get the 1% of the market that really cares about this stuff.
So you're talking about quality, and I think for this group in particular, that is supremely important. I mean, we all know that there are myriad sources for streaming music at this point, a plethora, a veritable panoply of choices. What, in terms of quality, is the difference between listening on Qobuz and listening on one of the other services? And I'm looking at this mainly from a production engineer standpoint. Why does your stuff sound better?
Well, here's what I can tell you. We don't really know what the other services do or don't do to the files in the process of ingesting, storing, and streaming them. I know what Qobuz does, which is pretty much nothing. Our supply chain, people say, how do you get the music? You guys sitting in the back ripping CDs? No. you know, it's a perennial question. No, the music does come, you know, over wires, in a feed from all the major labels and all the independent distributors, and even TuneCores, and DistroKids and aggregators of the world. It comes in a feed. We only accept lossless. So if something is sent to us as an MP3, it doesn't go up on the service. But we get files are delivered as lossless waves or FLAC files. We accept 16-bit, which is a CD quality audio file. What we prefer, and what most of the distributors are able to deliver today, is a 24-bit file, which allows the higher sampling rates. 48, 96, up to 192. We support them all. And the files come into Qobuz, and all we do is take the WAV file and losslessly compress it to FLAC. It's archived as a FLAC, same bit depth and sampling rate. This is, by the way, where the general public's they've glazed over long before I've gotten to this point. I appreciate this audience knows what I'm talking about and is interested. Somewhere around losslessly compressed is where I lose most audiences. But the FLAC file is what we stream. We don't apply any loudness normalization, although it's a requested feature, you know, because people are used to their playlists not jumping up and down in volume. Audiophiles, our core audience, they don't want us to do anything to the file, so we don't. In the future, we may introduce a loudness normalization option that you could turn on if you want that, but you're not bit perfect. You know, bit perfect is really the digital audiophiles mantra. So we don't do anything. And our player, you know, decodes the FLAC at the end, and you've got output that's identical to the file we received from the record company. So I do think that you know, limitation and you know, in fact, elimination of any fiddling with the file, you know, if it sounded crappy when we got it, it's going to sound crappy when you hear it at home. But if it's an immaculately recorded piece of music, it's going to sound immaculate, or it's going to sound as good as your you know, output system is able to make it sound. And you know, we listen to Qobuz through, you know, these guys who do have these $1 million systems, you know, and I'm looking at the system, I'm going, is it possible to have a $1 million system in a $300,000 house? Is that legal? But you know, the people that really know and care about digital audio do, you know, Qobuz a great service by being cheerleaders for it. Anyone who comes in and listens to the systems, and they use Qobuz, and it's that word of mouth thing. And the engineers at some of the companies that, you know, make the DACs, or, you know, one of our good friends is Ivana Manley, and they are great evangelists for Qobuz. They use it in, you know, their testing, and we love to listen to Qobuz through their headphone amps, and you know, it's a great ecosystem of people who make the consumer hardware, some of the pro audio people, and music fans, all kind of being part of our little part of the world.
Yeah, speaking of,
Sorry.
go ahead, go ahead.
I was just one quick comment. We had a brief conversation about this yesterday, and about quality and what Qobuz does or doesn't do to processing it. Jessica, do you remember your quote from yesterday after we talked about this?
I don't remember.
I wrote it
What
down.
did I say?
You
Oh, good.
said-
I'm glad you wrote it down.
You said, and I quote, "Thank you for doing nothing."
Right.
It's so true, though. I mean, as a mastering engineer, what do I want to hear when I pull up something I worked on. I want to hear what I approved in the studio and what my client approved. Again, that's something that should be a given. And, it's not in most of the world, but I'm grateful that there is a streaming service that's playing what I created.
Yeah, I did have a mastering engineer, pretty well known, say to me that he buys Qobuz downloads to check that what he sent to the record company is what they actually released. But I mean, you can be sure that nothing was done between the time we got it from the record company or the distributor and when we stream it, other than that lossless compression, which is, lossless. So that's where we're coming from, and it's just, again, all about the music, really putting that at the forefront.
Yeah, I was going to say, speaking of cheerleaders, Jessica, I know you and I are both fans from a listener perspective and an engineer, producer, master, like all the things perspective professionally. You were mentioning a couple like use cases. Do you mind telling us about, do you prefer downloading? I'm just curious how you use it.
Yeah, of course. In the professional sense, mastering engineers, all engineers need to keep up with how music sounds, how current music sounds, and for better or for worse, it can be a playlist world out there. So if one of my clients has a song and they want it to land on a playlist next to other artists, I want to make sure it sounds great. So I use reference tracks, as many of us do. And I don't want to stream a reference track because I don't want all that stuff in the way, like algorithms and streaming services and whatnot. I like to download. In the olden days, not so long ago, I'd run down to Tower Records and buy the CD, and that would be what I'd use for a reference. But these days, I just hop on Qobuz and download a track for like $1.49. I get the high res track, or I buy the whole album, and then I can A/B it in my DAW and really feel like I have a strong sense of what my reference track sounds like and what I want this song I'm working on to sound like. So professionally, I find that feature really useful. That's probably what I use it most for, other than, listening for pleasure, which, that's a whole other world.
Totally.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And
Okay.
an important one, it's definitely sometimes hard when you're working in and around music all the time. I worked at labels for many decades. The listening for pleasure part can kind of get lost in the shuffle, which is one of the things that I've liked about working for Qobuz the most the last 5 years, is really getting back into it, because just hearing so much about, oh, you got to hear this and you got to hear that, these great recorded pieces of music, and the excitement of it all has been sort of brought back for me, which is, I guess I was a little jaded. We're working at labels and continually pushing the rock up a hill. I'm still pushing a rock up a hill, but it feels like it's got a nice good sound quality. Should be like ice cream. Like everybody, who doesn't want that? Who can't support good sound quality and a music service that's just about music.
At least you're pushing the rock up the right hill. Maybe it's one that you like care about putting your futile efforts toward.
Right.
No,
Right.
it's actually even the quality of like how good something sounds can really transfix me, like as a listener, and get me out of more cognitive kind of like thinking critically about where the snare is and the vocal and all the things. So that's even a kind of like a way in for me sometimes to just feel like you're really there, and you kind of like stop thinking a little bit more. And I wanted to mention too, before we forget, if anybody has questions, feel free to drop them in the chat. And I want to mention too, Jessica, you were talking about the like how much you pay to download. Dan, can you talk a little bit about how about your pay structure and like how much of that is going to the artist, and how you find that comparatively, or
Yes. Yes, obviously it's a question that comes up all the time. The the streaming service pays out in the same kind of model that the mainstream streaming services use, which was dictated by the major record companies. We didn't come up with the model. It's this pro rata revenue share based on, market share that each supplier has. And the bottom line really is that roughly 70 cents out of every dollar we collect from the subscriptions goes out to our suppliers, which are the labels and the distributors, and then also a share goes to the publishers or the collecting societies, depending on the country, and performing rights, ASCAP and BMI and CSAC and GMR. There's a lot more of these guys coming through. So keeping that in mind, if the subscription is $13 a month, which is what Qobuz costs, who can tell me quickly what 70% of that is, goes as it should to the rights holders. Now, the individual artists may have different deals with their labels. I can't speak to that, but a few factors that we think are important to keep in mind. Like, we don't believe in the idea of music being free or racing to the bottom on price. We're actually trying to have a business out of being this service that relies on music. So, like I mentioned before, it's $12.99 a month, which is a little bit more than the mainstream services. There's no free tier. We don't have any advertising supported level. And everybody in the streaming service gets the full lossless and high resolution quality. There's not like a cheaper tier. Just have this one slightly more expensive service. And we also have the download store, which we push. This is a big part of our business in most countries that we operate in, and serving the lossless and high resolution download market is something that we think, if people want to support artists, buying an album for $10 or $12, for obvious reasons, ends up putting more more funds directly back into the pipeline to the creators. So that's not the only reason why people might want to buy a download, but it is, a more artist-friendly, artist-centric, way of exchanging the value of recorded music. And the other thing about Qobuz really is, with our editorial slant and our focus on stuff outside the mainstream, really just the idea of raising up music from genres like classical and jazz and whatever, the stuff that is not on the front page of mainstream streaming. Usually we put it on the front page and try to support independent labels and creators and musicians that are doing stuff that is sometimes considered underappreciated. We appreciate it. The wackier and crazier and more interesting, the better, actually.
Dan, can you talk a little bit about DJs downloading music and how that download business is functioning? It seems like the rest of the industry is sort of turning away from that. I know you've covered a little bit about that, but I'm curious to hear more.
Yeah. Well, there's a few different constituencies that are driving the download business right now. Like I mentioned, there's these older school audiophiles who like to own files that they can play from a local server, music server, hard drive, whatever you want to call it. And there's a few players that serve that audience. And the nice thing about Qobuz is that we do have this streaming service where people can be sampling music and listening to it before deciding to commit to a purchase. The up and coming segment, like you're mentioning, is DJs. And what we found is that despite the fact that a lot of DJ software does allow you to stream, it's risky in a live situation, and DJs do prefer to like bring their music on a hard drive or memory stick or whatever the current technology may be. When I was DJing, it was records. But the download store that that we have, which has this full catalog, it's everything from major labels and all the independent music, is really unique in having that full spectrum of music available, all lossless. DJs not only like to have their music locally when they're playing out, but lossless or high res through these giant systems is just gonna, in the recordings where it matters, sound better. A crappily encoded MP3, you hear it immediately if you're listening in a big PA system. So we're constantly trying to find ways to just let people who are doing this kind of work know we exist. Like this seminar.
Like us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Tell your DJ friends. This exists. This is available.
I'm curious about your, I was thinking about how Qobuz playlists too, of it's really editorial and almost educational.
Yeah, well, I mean, that might be the French lineage of the company, like very, you must do it this way. We've always done it this way. Our country existed long before the United States. But yeah, I
With
mean,
also a little bit of like maybe the movie High Fidelity when they're like, you don't know the beta band. Maybe just a little bit of that too.
Exactly. So it's still a little bit French, but the playlists are put together by a human curatorial team, really trying to do deep dives and interesting stuff that a computer couldn't do. That's the bottom line. Human rather than algorithmic. We do have some algorithmic recommendations, and people seem to want that, so we'll probably add more. But generally speaking, our stock and trade is the immaculately researched and interestingly compiled playlist with a human touch, often with written annotation and something again to give you something to read while you're listening.
And remind me, are the users able to create playlists that are both public and private?
Yes.
Okay.
So that's a big thing too. Qobuz has an online community that we started this past year that is kind of taken on a life of its own, and one of the best things to see is Qobuz users sharing their personally created playlists amongst each other, and really is just for the music lovers. We can see that these folks are really into it, and it's warms the cockles of my heart.
Love it.
Can we talk about high res for a second? You've mentioned that a number of times now, and I see that on the app, there are a number of titles that have the high res logo listed in them. I assume you're not streaming waves. Perhaps you have downloadable waves that people can purchase, but how do you make that high res claim stick?
Right. Well, when we I mean, on a download, it's obviously a little bit more straightforward. On streaming, before we launched the service, or after they launched it and decided they wanted to be a high resolution streaming service, the company in France, and this is before I joined, approached the Japan, is it called the Japan Audio File Society or the Japan Audio Society, It's the organization that actually makes and controls that particular high resolution, high res logo, the black and gold, that was originally created as a certification for hardware that could handle 24-bit audio above 48 kilohertz sampling rate. So when Qobuz approached them, there was not yet a standard for streaming. So they created one kind of for us. I mean, and determined that for us, any file that we stream that's 24-bit is high res. So this is some of them are actually 44.1 kilohertz sampling rate, but the vast majority 4896 and 192. And so if the file is 24-bit, we put that high res badge. And if anyone asks, we can produce the certification from Japan that allows us to do it. But you know, it is what it says. Again, it's only if the label has released it as 24-bit. We do not upsample or do anything to it's not to say that some labels don't have material that they think is 24-bit that's been upsampled somewhere along the way. That happens, as we all know, and we try to control for that. But with 140 million tracks on our servers, it's easier said than done for a company of our size. But there are there's definitely controversy and products that probably say they're high res but aren't really, and it's a variety of reasons why that can happen. What kind of questions do we have from the peanut gallery?
We just got one. I have one I'm going to ask really quick right before, which is, I'm curious, are there any pain points that occur to you in either, I'm thinking like crediting, digital booklet and file delivery? It's coming from so many places to get to you. Where the pain point kind of
Well, I
flashpoint
mean,
things
on the digital booklets, some of the suppliers, some of the distributors just can't do it. They don't have, like, it was never conceived. The digital booklets originally came from something that Apple iTunes had introduced years and years ago. So when that was the predominant way that people were getting their music, all the labels adjusted their systems to create and deliver these digital booklets. And when that changed, as a cost saving measure at some point, that was cut out. And so we've been trying to bring it back, but we're one small voice. But some labels, especially classical and jazz, really do see the value, and we are able to apply the booklets manually after the fact if the distributor can't handle it. So it's that's a big one, just spreading the word that we can take the digital booklets, because how can the opera fan not have the libretto, to quote the owner of Qobuz, who's a big opera fan.
I ask myself the same question all the time. If I had a nickel. And do you see any questions in the chat?
Oh, they're
in
cool
the
stuff.
Q&A.
And or your brain?
Yeah. Do you want to handle the questions from the Q&A list, Jordan?
Oh, yes, if I can overcome my technical prowess.
I can take the first one and stall for you. Well,
Oh no, I see it. That's cool.
Okay. Right.
This one says, any concern that some aggregators like CD Baby do not support high res? Are there any plans to help change that?
Yes, it's a concern that we can't do much about. I mean, I've met with them several times and they're working on it, but again, all their systems were built before it was even it's a big thing for them to change, although they're part of a bigger company now. Almost everybody supports it now. The few who don't are, trying to figure out how to, because it's certainly not going away. And now that, most of the mainstream services can take it, you're definitely at a disadvantage as a distributor.
This is kind of related in my mind, but this says, do you take submissions from independent labels?
Yeah, absolutely. But generally they come through a distributor or an aggregator that, again, going from the DIY ones that anyone can upload anything anytime to the, more traditional distributors. We're not really able to make direct deals with every independent label. We just don't, our licensing team is one poor woman in Paris. So we generally, unless it's a really established company, but we want to work with everybody, and we want to get music from everyone that's making it. So we do, like I said, have deals with almost every independent distributor and aggregator.
Here's one more quick one that says, is Qobuz compression proprietary or off the shelf?
Well, our compression is off the shelf. It's just FLAC. We do encoding. Our streams have to be secured due to our deals with the major record companies. Interestingly, this is where the famous universal audio watermark came from some years ago. And so we have a proprietary encoding, but it doesn't affect the audio quality. It's just the way the chunks of data are sent to make it harder to rip the stream digitally somehow, to pirate it. This is, so there is something proprietary, but it doesn't have to do with the sound. But just in case anybody from Universal is listening, those streams are secure. Gosh darn it.
Do you want to take up, Glenn?
Yeah, there's a sort of an interesting, different approach to a question here, and it is, since COVID, it seems, this is more of a statement, but I infer a question. And I just lost it. Since COVID, it seems that there are so many streaming services no longer have phone helplines, and even with email have long delays for answers to questions that make it difficult to solve problems in deadline situations. So what's your approach to customer service?
Well, as a small company, that's a huge pain point for us, because we're a small company with a high intensity customer that really, some of these guys, if they've got $1 million system, they don't want to wait 24 hours for an email response. But the reality is, as a small company, we struggle with it because we also don't want to outsource our customer service. I mean, we could have people that don't know anything making the answers, but in general, I think that good customer service is something that a company should really pay attention to, because it's one thing you can control. There's so many factors that are completely out of your control as a company, but if customer service is knowledgeable and responsive, I don't know. Anyway, with Qobuz, we're far from perfect on this front, and it's really just our size and growing pains. I'm wondering if the guy who asked the question is waiting for an email back from Qobuz customer service right now. He may well be, but it's a known issue for us as a small company. Just trying to live up to the promise of being a premium service. This is a tough area.
I think of engaging with people. One of the questions was, do you offer Qobuz for artists? Something like Spotify for artists. Is there any ways that you're engaging with artists other than label or distributors?
Yeah, well, the tough thing for us, again, being so small, we don't have artist dashboard tools. We don't have that's a whole nother product. We would have to have a whole nother team, as these big tech companies do. They've got hundreds of people working on it. Just for scale, Qobuz is 100 people total globally. So it's an area where we're, pretty far behind the mass market services. But I think we make up for it by being approachable as humans. We just don't have the scale of these, giant companies that have millions and millions of subscribers. We're hundreds of thousands of subscribers. So the idea that you're going to get anything really useful from big data, our data is not that big. It's definitely more qualitative than quantitative, and it's a certain kind of listener. So trying to find ways with the information and data we have to make it a little more rich for artists is something that I do think about, because we don't have the full dashboard, but that doesn't mean we don't have data that could be made interesting. So it's a good question. I think about this stuff
And
a
I would
lot.
say, I think you are currently featuring, and from an editorial perspective, I think I've seen a mid-level artist be able to have eyes on their music on a platform. So in the meantime, that's a useful resource.
Yeah. Yeah.
Tony Brooks says, do you accept and use the ISNI party identifier to assure that releases land on the correct artist page?
No. Huge
Appreciate your
problem.
honesty.
Huge problem for Qobuz, but a lot of our, I don't think it comes through from the distributors, because what my supply chain team tells me, because this is an artist disambiguation, is an everyday issue at Qobuz. Are these guys on on my calls with the product and supply chain team? We have a big issue with this at Qobuz, and we have to manually separate, and it's a fight that I'm constantly in with the team in France to prioritize this. I'm not sure they fully understand it. I mean, how many Serge Gainsbourgs are there? Sorry.
Another great question for the
French
ages.
music joke.
Here's an interesting question. How does Qobuz compare with Bandcamp? Obviously, they're more artist oriented, and Qobuz is serving a variety of constituents. Can you talk a little bit about that, please?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, Bandcamp is a great platform that really, you know, two things really important. One is that they only take 15% margin or fee, whatever they call it, which is hard to sustain given the fact that, they now had two, sold twice in as many years. That's very low margin business, but it's great for the artists, and it also, they offer, basically the marketplace kind of function, where not only are you selling digital music, and they do sell downloads, but they sell physical goods. You can sell your vinyl through Bandcamp. So those are ways that they're very, very different from Qobuz. The download sale, you can buy high res and lossless downloads through Bandcamp if the artist uploads them that way. But what Bandcamp doesn't really have is a proper streaming service. You can stream through Bandcamp, but it's not set up for a full streaming experience. So I feel like they're complementary. The other thing, Bandcamp does have all of these direct relationships with artists, super small niche artists that don't even do distribution through a DIY aggregator. So there is stuff on Bandcamp that's not on Qobuz, and vice versa, really in the other direction. But because we have all the major label deals and all of that historical content, there's a lot you can download from Qobuz that we don't have.
And this is sort of related, but somebody was curious about the percentage division between your streaming and your download business.
Surprisingly, the download is as much as 30% of the revenue in some countries. I mean, the US is actually the strongest right now for download. And so no pressure, but go out and buy some downloads. Keep us strong. It's a significant part of our business, and it's underserved. There's not a lot of competition, so it's something that we really think can grow.
Is there anything that you're kind of looking forward to personally? And as you think about, there's the roadmap, there's different divisions of the company. I'm curious, as in your role, is there anything that you're looking forward to putting in the company's path as you look where audio and music is going?
Well, we're opening up in Japan later this year, which is going to be really great for Japan, finally. And great for us. It's a good market with a lot of audiophiles. There's some very cool Japanese labels that we've signed as a result that, will get me some music that I personally have wanted to hear on Qobuz that we don't have, or haven't had previously. And in general, there's some interesting developments in lossless wireless technology. So be able to get over the hurdles with, Bluetooth technology that can only really ever get to a certain amount of throughput. There's now the low power Wi-Fi and technology that can easily switch between Bluetooth and Wi-Fi. So, and the headphones are coming that will be able to do real lossless and real high res without a cable. It's coming. I think that'll be a game changer.
And reading my dream journal.
Yeah, assuming it doesn't make our heads glow. But I've seen some prototypes and heard some headphones. I mean, that's something, again, people just don't know what music is supposed to sound like. So I think that, making it even more convenient is only going to increase the number of people who start to, know that sound quality is a thing. We all know, but people of a certain generation and outside of our world don't even know that sound quality never occurred to them that there could be good sound quality and bad sound quality. If it all
That's why
comes
we
to the
get to be
speaker,
educators.
yeah. I mean, but we
But
really,
I have a little anecdote that I'll share with you about quality. My husband subscribes to a different streaming service, so when we get in the car, if he's in charge of the music, he plugs in, he pulls something up, and I'll give him the side eye, and he knows he like unplugs. My phone goes in, and we'll stream the same album from the Qobuz app, just in our crappy car system, and it's noticeable. So I have converted my husband, who's a big music fan but not a professional. It is absolutely noticeable how much better it sounds to stream the Qobuz app in our crappy car. So one by one, I'm trying to do the good work here.
yeah, it's word of mouth. Like I said, we don't have the budget to be able to do big giant mass marketing campaigns. So we speak to the people who, we know may already care a little bit about this stuff.
And did you say you sort of inadvertently commissioned a jazz record that's like on Qobuz exclusively now?
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, we partnered with Christian McBride to do an exclusive Qobuz session, and we booked the Studio A at uh how come I can't remember the name of the studio anymore?
Power Station.
Power Station. Thank you. I was going to say Avatar, but I meant Power Station. But Studio A, Power Station, and the idea was to record the whole thing in 24-bit 192, which is, short of DSD, the highest, sound quality you could record in digitally and or not. I mean, you could do 32, whatever, but it's much higher than they usually do. And not only did he put together an incredible group to play on the date with Mike Stern and this was great, but he composed an original piece, which we didn't expect. We figured he would come in and do some standards or whatever, just blow up whatever improv he could, but he wrote like this very complicated jazz fusion piece. Even like Mike Stern was complaining. He's like, man, why you have to do me like that? So like working off this sheet music. But we recorded, an EP. I think it was that piece, and there was a standard and another improv that they did. Recorded it all in 24/192. Very light mixing, very light mastering, and released it on Qobuz as an exclusive, as streaming in 24/192, which we felt was a nice way to illustrate what this all actually means. And Christian, himself was like blown away during the process of how good everything was sounding. And a guy who plays a big stand-up acoustic bass knows how it's supposed to sound. So yeah, no, that was a good one.
That is a good one.
So, and now for the buzziest of buzzwords. Are you streaming immersive? Do you have plans to stream immersive?
We are not right now, short of a small campaign we did with the THX spatial format, which goes in 2-channel and requires no special decoding. But we've talked extensively to the various players in the current music immersive, and kind of what happened was we didn't have the budget to be able to develop for it when it was first launching, and then the mainstream services launched with the immersive formats included at the basic price, which left us in a position of it wasn't going to be a feature that we could add and raise our price. So for example, Dolby Atmos music is in our plans, but there's other more ROI direct impact things that we have to get done first, like launching in Japan. And as a really small company, it's not like we can just put a couple guys for a few weeks on building for Dolby Atmos. So yes, it's planned. We don't know when, and it's not a huge priority. I mean, people like it. I mean, it's something that I wish we could have every format. But you know what? We're going to be offering DSD in our download store soon. That's something for people who really want to have some highly specialized digital music. DSD. Not a lot of content available, but that what is astounding.
That's awesome. I think like the peace of mind too of knowing how unchanged once it leaves the studio, once it leaves the mastering room, that I just feel like in so few circumstances right now, in recorded music, what people are hearing, and this eliminates a lot of those things in the pipeline that are all putting a thumbprint, a fingerprint on something that wasn't consented to have fingerprints put on it. Do you know what I mean?
Yep. It's it's a niche that we're in that is I think you were saying that we're pushing a rock up a hill, but at least it's a good hill.
That's right. And you were saying that a couple of people had asked about the number of subscribers. You said it's like hundreds of thousands kind of range.
Yeah. I mean, we don't publish the number, but we're trying to get to 1 million, and we got a good jump on it. But you know, it's definitely a niche player. Nobody is getting rich from their streams on Qobuz, no matter how much we pay per stream.
It's building such a
Other
great
than
foundation, though.
yeah, Keith Jarrett may make enough to buy a you know, Nora Jones and Diana Krall, who are huge. They may get, you know, make enough to buy a nice meal from Qobuz.
It is interesting to think about even the possibility of an artist being able to have an effect on their income with a streaming service. I feel like even like giant records, it's hard to move the needle on how much income that represents. But you could have if you own your masters and have that kind of like direct line in this way, and have your fans animate them to download, or you know, whatever is the highest return. That's
Yeah, well, I know it can happen. I mean, there's a great audiophile label called Blue Coast Records. Cookie Marenko, who you guys may know, great engineer, and she has a label, and we did do a direct deal with her. And she really did drive, you know, she has her own online store. So she's pushing to sell direct, but in terms of streaming services or third-party download stores, she said, you know, at the end of the day, once the checks started coming from Qobuz, it was something. It was, you know, a lot more than she had expected. I mean, obviously it's super specialized for our audience, and we promoted it and she promoted it, but I think that you know, the key in all of this is know your audience, and make sure that you're putting whatever you're offering where your audience is, whether you're, you know, someone making music or selling a streaming service.
that's just great career advice in general.
Yeah.
And maybe a good place to end. We've had such an amazing conversation. Thank you so much for meeting with us and talking to us about all these things that we know producers and engineers care a lot about.
I'm looking at a quote in the chat from Barry Coughing. Loathe the high-res streaming because I hate knowing, wait a minute, I hate knowing that what we are hearing in the studio doesn't make it to the real world. You know, producers and engineers work so hard to make things sound great. And it's not an easy time to do that, you know, with all these different kinds of listening situations. You know, it's not just like either it's on a pair of speakers or in your car, you know, it's like all sorts of ways people are listening. So thanks so much for this. This was elevating. Any final comments from anybody on screen here?
Well, I just see Darren had a question about uploading the album credits. It comes from in this feed with the metadata from the suppliers and the record companies. So some distributors are really good about using all the fields available to them, and some strip it all out no matter what the label gave them. So that's a constant issue. But in these cases, again, if you see something that could be corrected or updated, I'm easy to find on LinkedIn. Send me a message. I actually read them.
Yeah.
So, you know, I don't want, you know, we're accessible.
Yeah, we've been in conversations with a lot of the distributors about that, and about not having enough fields for everything, or not being, you know, it's challenging for them too, because it means extra things they have to build.
Yeah, they built it a certain way.
They built it a certain way, but there is definitely, we held a meeting last year with a lot of them during Indie Week when I met Dan, and there is progress being made. People are listening more, and it's step by step. So, but thank you for all that you do with Qobuz to move that forward, because it's so important to all of our members. I just want to thank everybody who joined us. We hope you found it both interesting and enjoyable. Today's episode will be available soon on the Recording Academy's YouTube. And we hope to see you at the next episode of the forum. And remember, we want to hear from you with your ideas for upcoming topics for the forum. So that's it. Thank you, team. And bye for now.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.